Welcome to part 5 of this series on Moby Dick. In this lecture we will discuss chapters 16 through 21. In chapter 16, Ishmael searches for a whaling ship on which he and Queequeg can sail. He finds the Pequod and is hired by the ship's owners, Peleg and Bildad. The owners assure Ishmael that the captain of the ship, named Ahab, is a competent captain, despite the recent rumors of his strange behavior arising from the loss of his leg to a whale. Besides, my boy, he has a wife, not 3 voyages wedded, a sweet, resigned girl. Think of that. By that sweet girl that old man has a child. Hold ye then there can be any utter, hopeless harm in Ahab? No, no, my lad. Stricken, blasted if he be, Ahab has his humanities. Peleg, Bildad, and Ahab are biblical figures. They share many of the same characteristics with their namesakes from Moby Dick, and even foreshadow future events in the novel. Peleg is an ancestor of the Israelites, whose name forms the root lettering for sailing and a military tent. In Moby Dick, Peleg is always seen within or around a tent on the Pequod. Bildad is one of Job's friends. He accuses Job of behaving immorally, and thus rightfully incurring God's wrath. In Moby Dick, Bildad warns others to repent, else they will perish in the fiery pit. Ahab is the 7th king of Israel. He worships Baal rather than Yahweh. He does not heed prophetic warnings, and he is slain in battle by an arrow. In Moby Dick, Captain Ahab's behavior is similar to the biblical Ahab, and they share the same fate. In chapter 17, Ishmael returns to the Tripot's Inn, and finds Queequeg engaged in rituals for his Ramadan. There was Queequeg now, certainly entertaining the most absurd notions about Yojo and his Ramadan. But what of that? Queequeg thought he knew what he was about, I suppose. He seemed to be content, and there let him rest. All our arguing with him would not avail. Let him be, I say, and heaven have mercy on us all, Presbyterians and pagans alike, for we are all somehow dreadfully cracked about the head, and sadly need mending. Queequeg meditates all night. In the morning his Ramadan ends, and he and Ishmael walk to the Pequod. In chapter 18, Queequeg demonstrates his skills with the harpoon to Bildad and Peleg, who immediately hire him. They promise him the largest share of profits from the voyage that any harpooner ever received. Bildad tries to convert Queequeg to Christianity, but Peleg discourages this. He says that a pious harpooner is not a good harpooner. A man's religion is one thing, and this practical world quite another. This world pays dividends. In chapter 19, Ishmael and Queequeg return from the Pequod to the Tripot's Inn. Along the way, they are met by a strange man named Elijah, who suggests that the Pequod and Captain Ahab are doomed. Well, well, what is signed, and what is to be will be, and then again perhaps it won't be after all. Anyhow, it is all fixed and arranged already, and some sailors or other must go with him, I suppose, as well as these as any other men, God pity 'em. This is another biblical allusion. Elijah of the Bible foretells the death of the biblical Ahab, just as Elijah does in Moby Dick. In chapter 20, provisions for the voyage are brought onto the Pequod over the course of several days. Captain Ahab is noticeably absent from all these proceedings, and Ishmael feels uneasy about this. But when a man suspects any wrong, it sometimes happens that if he be already involved in the matter, he insensibly strives to cover up his suspicions even from himself. And much this way it was with me. I said nothing and tried to think nothing. In chapter 21, Ishmael and Queequeg walk to the Pequod on the day designated for the start of the voyage. They encounter Elijah, who asks Ishmael whether he saw men boarding the ship through the early morning mist. Ishmael replies that he did, but when Ishmael and Queequeg arrive at the ship, they find only one sailor on board. The sailor informs them that Captain Ahab boarded the ship last night. After sharing a smoke for several minutes, the rest of the crew begins to board the ship. It was now clear sunrise. Soon the crew came on board in 2s and 3s. The riggers bestirred themselves, the mates were actively engaged, and several of the shore people were busy in bringing various last things on board. Meanwhile, Captain Ahab remained invisibly enshrined within his cabin. Don't forget to subscribe and join us for part 6 of this series on Moby Dick.